Hi there. My name is Amanda Botello, and I proudly serve on the restaurant marketing team here at OpenTable. We are so grateful to welcome you today to In It Together, our weekly webinar series. If you like what you hear today, we hope you will consider joining us for future webinars each Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Before we get started, a few quick housekeeping items. If you have questions along the way, please use the Q&A box in the top right corner of the console. We will save some time towards the end of our conversation to answer some of your questions. In the resource list section on the bottom left, we've linked out to our restaurant blog, our COVID-related resource center, today's featured charity, and the registration date for future webinars. This webinar will be recorded and shared out with all of you afterwards. And with that, I'm delighted to turn it over to our host of the series, our Chief Operating Officer, Andrea Johnston.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. I know there are a lot of faces on here. We can't see you because we're seeing each other, so we can speak together. But I know there are tons, so thank you so much. This past month has been really hard for everyone personally, as we're in shelter in place, anxiety about getting COVID, anxiety about whether you're going to have a job, special times for parents with children and trying to work from home, to which I can attest. But that really pales in comparison to how devastating this has been to the restaurant community, as you know. In my 10 years at OpenTable, I've never seen a more challenging time. And with that, OpenTable is trying to do whatever we can to support our restaurants through this period. And that was the inception of this In It Together webinar series that we've put together. Now more than ever, community is so important at a local level, at a national level, and at a global level to help weather this storm. And there is also incredible thirst to hear what other restaurants are doing now and how they're setting up for the future, and share that and have a discussion about that, which is why today our topic is the COVID pivot. And I'm thrilled to have Renee Erickson and Bill Chait on to share what they've been doing. They've been very impressive in how they've pivoted and how they're thinking about things on the go forward. So by way of introduction, if you don't know them, they're both fabulous people. Renee is a James Beard award-winning chef out of Seattle. She owns 10 restaurants. As an example, the Whale Winds and Bateau. Each of her restaurants are a little bit different, and she's pivoted a little bit differently on what she's doing there. So I look forward to hearing what she has to say. And Bill has been prominent in the LA restaurant community for over 30 years, opening Bestia, Republique. Currently, his projects are Tess and Tartine Manufactory, and he's really shifted how they some of the functional things were there, but he's really pushed the envelope here during this time. So with that, let's get to it. Renee, when we spoke last week, you shared a little bit about how your last 3 weeks have been, what's been going through your mind, how you've been thinking about things. And so I'd love it if you share, some of what you shared with us to this broad group.
Sure. Hello, everybody. Yeah, it's been, as it has been for everyone, just kind of upside down and scrambly. We essentially went from the 10 restaurants to closing all of them, and then trying to pivot 3 of them into takeout. And we reopened Bateau, or kind of pivoted Bateau into a butcher shop. We butcher in-house already, and so we were able to pretty quickly, the team there was able to reorganize their efforts and have basically, cuts every day as we would in the restaurant normally, along with a burger kit, a beef box. It's grown over the last few weeks. They're really trying their best to try to figure out what else we can offer as we grow, and trying to offer more things. We reopened Whale Winds as a takeout in the beginning, and that was kind of where we brought all the food from all the other restaurants to try to use up before it spoiled, which was a real challenge, especially when you have shellfish. We also started a family meal out of Whale Winds to offer to the team to come and pick up. We do that 4 days a week. We also try to get it to the other teams that are working at Bateau and Wilmot's Ghost. And Wilmot's is in the Spheres downtown Seattle, and that is largely pizza, and then that's kind of been growing as well. I know today they have a meatball sub, which is pretty exciting to see. So every place was chosen for various reasons, but largely to spread it out around the Seattle and have accessibility to guests that dine at our restaurants all over. And also, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the decisions were made kind of on the fly. So we were just trying to figure out, okay, like, what can we do? What's going to be different? What's not going to be competing with each other, and trying to, preserve as much as we can with very little staffing effort and, a lot of heroic work by the people that are still working with us. So I wouldn't say it's gotten easier. I would say we've gotten more organized for sure. I think the challenge for us serving the public, is always really exciting and fun. And in this situation, it's kind of scary and daunting. And so trying to come up with guidelines and rules for us as we've grown and learned and see what works and what doesn't. And, it's just been trial and error, a lot of that. So it's been crazy in a word, Andrea. Did we pause Andrea? Where did she go? Hello?
I think she may be on pause, but I think we can turn the question over to Bill now as well, just if you could share how the last few weeks have been for you and what you've experienced.
I mean, like Renee, obviously we lost dining rooms everywhere. We immediately opened for takeout delivery. We were already sort of in the takeout delivery business. So we weren't really in the delivery business, but we certainly were in the ability to do takeouts. Now it's a much different animal because it's our whole business. We had to get our technology sort of up to speed. We already had online ordering and some other things that were in place, but we never pushed them to the maximum so that you could order in the morning for a delivery that day or pick up that day. So I think one of the benefits of this is it's given everybody a big sense of urgency in terms of how fast we move, obviously, on technology changes. We have a fantastic, and inside of Tartine, they have a really fantastic technology team, whereas in the sort of freestanding restaurant world, everybody's sort of every man for themselves. The general manager is sort of pivoting quickly to get stuff up online and get active on Postmates. We've never been using Postmates. We're using delivery services, which we'd never used before. So the good news is I think this will stay with us forever in the sense that we're not going to obviously back away from the takeout portion of the business once we get dining rooms back. But it's the idea that you're running a bodega with milk and eggs and meat that's cryovac, and you're selling everything that's inside of your refrigerators in the front of your restaurant is a little bit odd. Produce and things like that, but I'm not sure we'll do that forever. But it's been like I said, because it's such an unusual situation, it's caused everybody to think out of the box, and I think the nimbleness will now be with us forever, hopefully.
Hi, I'm back. Can you hear me?
I see. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. The joy of webcamming. It turns out my neighbor's internet connection is strong as mine, so we had to do the quick run back. So sorry about that. So I missed a little bit, but Renee, I know when we were talking last week, how did you decide to try to do something new? You mentioned something about 3 cow carcasses and all the produce sitting there, and what went through your mind in terms of, okay, let's do this first, this second, this third, but eventually evolve sort of what you're doing with the takeout?
Well, fortunately, I think we were looking at restaurants that were still up until, because Seattle, compared to the rest of the country, had kind of a slow entry into this. We had 3 weeks of half the amount of business, 3/4 the amount of business. Everything kind of got slower and slower and slower. So we were looking at okay, where are people still functioning kind of at a higher percentage, and where could we have the most, impact. And so at Bateau, obviously, with whole animals in the dining room, we have a cooler in the dining room. They're not just hanging out in the dining room, but that was obvious, something that we couldn't really shift from it. And the team there was really excited about trying to pivot. And so that was fairly simple. Whalewinds was, a combination of a big space that we could probably do other things out of, like, we're doing hospital meals twice a week. And we're starting to sell, like Bill, we're kind of selling as much as we can. So we've been selling, Dungeness crab. Tomorrow I'm going to go pick up 45 crab and cook them and sell them in a crab kit. So it's just kind of whatever we think that people are interested in, or farmers that we're trying to support, and coming up with creative ways to get that in the hands of people. Because I know it's going to the grocery store obviously is daunting enough, and feeling excited about it. So trying to come up with safe ways to get food to our guests in some way that kind of still represents sea creatures and our business, and feeling, good about it. Because that's kind of a lot of the hurdle is the emotional part of doing this, and feeling, if it's worth it, if it's, helping, there's just all the questions that I think we hear in the news about the safety of it and everything. So trying to balance those two things and finding some joy in it is, I think, for me, what was been, really kind of the thing to keep in mind was, like, how do we balance all of that? So everyone's, the teams in each location are essentially, like, kind of coming up with ideas. They've been incredible, and kind of talking to each other and presenting stuff. And so it's been pretty, a quick creative process in trying to come up with, ways that we can produce things. And not all of them are working, and some of them may not last forever. I agree that the takeout will be, something that we keep forever. We never really had it. We didn't ever have caviar or anything in the restaurants. And we're going to put it everywhere and hope that we can sell as much as we can. We're going to add talk, we're essentially, like, kind of throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Mm-hmm. And I know one of you talked about is supporting local farmers, and you talked about Hama as an example on the oysters. So I think that's amazing. So how are you thinking about who you're going to support as you're trying to support everybody to keep fooding?
The opportunity to cook for the hospitals, it gave us the ability, we needed to buy more food, because what we had been doing was taking all the walk-ins from all the restaurants and moving them to different locations. And we burned through that pretty quickly with family meal and trying to hand out food. And it gave us the opportunity to then buy something, which we weren't doing for the first 2.5 weeks. So in doing that, we just decided, we're like, okay, well, if we're going to buy vegetables, we need to reach out to a farmer. And so we drove out to Carnation to support local roots and loaded up our car and brought that back. And, it made the choice of what we were going to make easier, because, it was the end of winter and there's not a lot available, although that's starting to change, which is great. But we just, if we're going to spend money, we just wanted to put it in the hands of people that have supported us and are, that we have really great longstanding relationships with. So buying from local roots, buying from Hama Hama, other shellfish purveyors in the area. So I don't know, it's just how we normally function, but this just felt even more important to do so in that way. Because the easiest thing would be to get someone who's still delivering to bring us stuff. But it was kind of a pleasant drive to get out of town and go out to the fields and pick up some food. So, and it feels better. I think that's what's missing is that connection to the people that you are creating these experiences for. And so to just have a little bit of normal feels good.
Yeah, that's incredible. And then, Bill, I know that you were sort of, your test and Tartine Manufactory were sort of set up already to do this type of business, but you you've chosen some different technologies that are actually helping it thrive and helping things get through. You want to speak a bit about that, or perhaps you already did when I cut out?
A little bit. I mean, we already had, an online system with Brandable. We've added obviously all the delivery apps. We actually added Talk for using it for packages, which seems to be the sort of preferred mechanism in LA, is to use Talk for all the various boxes and packages that people are putting together. I mean, I think that the beauty of obviously the technology aspect of it is that this was all stuff we had to do before, and it just created a much, we're a lot more motivated to get it done quickly. And I think that, the whole nature of people coming to work, I mean, as much as I know there certainly is, there's a concern, of course, but I think people are really happy to be able to come to work. I think that, as difficult as this is, it reinforces, the teams and the people that really, they carry the weight of the businesses, on a daily basis. You really see those people excel, especially in these types of situations. So I think it's, it's a strange team building exercise that's going on that I think will never go back. Because again, this is, people will remember this moment, forever, for the rest of their lives. It's our, it's this generation's 9/11 moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you think, a month ago feels so long ago these days. But if you think about what you've done, are there things that you wish you'd done, both of you, a little bit differently in order to set you up better or move faster? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think where we're looking at now is trying to reorganize how we're all working. Like so when I say we, I mean like me and my two business partners have been doing things that were needed, obviously, in the mad rush of it all, but having the time to get to a place where we actually can think, we realize that we're missing out on some of the important kind of support and oversight with staff, like the teams, need, I think, our help in ways that we didn't have the energy to see early on. I mean, we obviously know that because it's how it is normally, but in the crisis mode, we were just heads down and kind of going. And so we're hoping to change that a little bit and bring back a few more employees to ease up some of the physical hours so that we're able to kind of hear our team's need for help or questions or whatever, because that's been, I think, the biggest, for at least for the last few days, like what we've been talking about is like, how do we transition, because now it's becoming what we are gonna do, like this new takeout whatever is our new business, and we have to do it the best we can, which means being able to support the people that are producing this food better rather than being the people producing the food. So and that requires, I think, it's a little scary because no one's really financially doing great. So it's a bit of a hurdle to overcome. But I think if we're going to try to, continue with this, we have to be as skilled at it as we can and, have all the systems functioning really well and be able to withstand a good bit of time in this role. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, I can imagine tricky balancing acts, right? Because of the minimum wage laws and some of the cities, right? You have to cut to the core, but then you cut to the core and then you're cooking 20 hours a day, right? And you've got two other people there. So it's a tough thing to think through for sure. Yeah. And Bill, how about you?
Well, I think that, the nature of I think the work environment, especially because, everybody does everything. I mean, there's no waiter and busboy. There's only people that are, sort of team members. So, yes, I understand it's not going to have a waiter jump in the kitchen and start cooking. But on the other hand, a lot of the curbside pickup and things like that, the waiters want to do it. Everybody wants to participate in every aspect of the business. We've been using kitchen people in the front of the house quite a bit because they're there and they want to work and you have a small group of people, and now we're doing what Renee's doing. We're adding people back as business actually has been building up. It's pretty good for this. It's not like before, but it's, sales are growing, week over week, which is good. So I think what you're going to end up with afterwards is a much more cohesive spirit for, eliminating the sort of, that's not my job. Not that we ever had that much of that anyway, but I think you're going to have a much more cross-trained, much more nimble, much more so excited to work climate. And I do think that, I'm not a big believer in the V-shaped recovery, because I think that these types of events are so cataclysmic that it takes people time to recover emotionally to this. Some will be faster, some will be slower. But I do think there'll be a recovery. And I think that, the recovery is going to be longer than everybody probably anticipates, but it will definitely be, better than this, that's for sure. So we're imagining, what the reopening sort of looks like, even though it might be a month or a month and a half away. It's hard to tell. California, it's pretty conservative here. So I think that everybody's extremely nervous about, a secondary backlash, obviously in the fall. But I think that, listen, one of my partners in the project is Wolfgang Puck and the catering business. And their catering private events business is literally wiped out, completely wiped out. And, there's no conventions. They do a lot of convention parties and events. You don't see those coming back for a long time. They're like the stadium. So I think that, the smaller groups, smaller events, smaller everything is going to be what's going to happen. Hopefully there'll be more of it, and that'll help make up for this. But, I think the idea that you can afford to abandon anything that you've started now once we reopen is probably not the case. You've got to just keep it all going. It's going to be a much more diverse sales model, in the future.
Yeah, and I remember, Bill, you mentioned, hey, after the 2008 crash, right? You didn't see a ton of restaurant reopenings until maybe 2010, 2011. How do you think this is going to follow suit?
Well, we opened a restaurant in the middle of this, believe it or not. We opened a Tartine in Santa Monica, which actually is doing pretty well for takeout delivery, obviously. And we're going to try to open up another one, which we had constructed and was ready to open, ironically in December, January. And then this whole thing happened and we got delayed. So we're probably going to try to reopen that or open it for the first time, maybe in the next month. Wow. I think that, it's going to be a period where there's no openings. I mean, like in 2008, 2009, everything that was planned to be opened in 2010 was obviously not, because there was no financing going on. I mean, other than PPP loans, I can't imagine people borrowing money in this environment, not for a restaurant. And I can't imagine walking to investors and telling them, hi, well, would you like to invest in the restaurant business, in 2020? I think that what will happen is there'll be a period now where, there'll be sort of not a lot of, as much new activity as there was before. So there'll be a gap like there was in 2010 and 2011. There's a lot of the, restaurants that opened after that opened up the next year or the year after. There was definitely a gap period. So again, I think this is, nobody knows what to expect, but as an optimist, my perception is that if you make it through this and you're sort of have a positive spirit, things will gradually get better. And I think that, unfortunately, there'll be a lot of small businesses that don't make it through it. It's just inevitable. And it doesn't matter whether you get loans or don't get loans. It's just, reopening after a situation like this, if you're not in the business of opening things in the first place, is already hard. And then in the face of the uncertainty of this, it's almost impossible to imagine.
Yeah, it's rough. Well, so to close out our questions before we pivot to QA on a higher note, I think, when speaking with both of you, you made a number of comments about community, whether it's community in your neighborhoods with diners, with, Renee feeding the hospitals, that sort of thing. Like, what have you learned about community and people and how they've shown up during this period to help?
Well, we've found, what's really interesting is our best clients, of course, are our existing clients, and they come in and they buy, they're shopping for their refrigerators and freezers, and I'm sure they're buying food that they can't eat in many instances, because some people walk in buying $1,000 worth of stuff in one of the bodegas. I think you value. I mean, one of the things that I think everybody loses sight of, when you're really busy, you sometimes lose sight of the fact that every single restaurant client is an important client. It's like you win the battle one pair of feet at a time, traveling to your restaurant. And we certainly remind everybody of that, but I think this is one of those situations where you really know it. And that your restaurant clients that are good are super valuable. And then I think the same thing's going to happen with your vendors and with your suppliers. I think that, I agree with Renee. We don't get as much opportunity to go directly to farms to buy things. They come to us, of course, in the city, but I think, we deal with a lot of small vendors that we appreciate, but we appreciate them more now because they're really going through a tough time as well. I mean, people don't think about it, but, we have a vendor called Cream Co. They're great. They do with a lot of small farms. Their business is destroyed. It's all, they can't pivot into supermarkets because they were never in that business. So I think you definitely value, both sides of it now. It's much more of a community, in terms of your thinking is beyond just operating.
Yeah. Renee, anything to add?
I agree about the guests, just wanting to help in some way. I think we would get, especially early on, we were getting tons of emails about anything and ways to help. And it's just, it feels so good to have that relationship with the people that you've spent years, getting to know and serving and, having in your dining rooms. And, I think that's really motivating, which is, I think, what you really kind of have to hold on to in all of this is that, like Bill's saying, we will get through this in some way. It's just, trying to be positive and trying to focus on those sort of relationships that you've cultivated for years and continuing to do so. I know, like we saw, I think everyone in town selling cocktail kits, and like, Lord knows how many cocktail kits anyone needs, but they're still selling. So I think it's, the freezers are full. So now they're loading up the booze, but I mean, people are good and they just want to help. And I think restaurants have become such a huge part of people's lives that the idea of them going away in a large quantity is pretty horrifying to them, because it's become, in Seattle, and like everywhere in the country, really, it's changed the way we live in America, and it's better for it. And so, the hope is that we can all, survive in some way. It's scary because I know a lot won't, but I think trying to, being positive, I think, is the one thing that, we all, I think, have our moments, but trying to focus on that and really seeing the good in it all is where I'm trying to stay, at least, because it's heavy at times. Absolutely.
Well, thank you both so much for answering our questions. I think, my takeaways are you have to be nimble and think out of the box, right? And then revisit and think, okay, was that the right move? Do I need more staff? Do I not? And I think just the positivity and optimism that you both have to weather this, I think is really for others to think through. So I think we're going to move to audience questions. But before we do, the charity that we're sponsoring today with this webinar, Restaurant Employee Fund. Bill, would you mind talking a little bit about that?
Well, the Restaurant Employee Relief Fund, it's a national group, but NRA is behind it. The NRA has done a lot of good things. We don't have as much contact with them as we do the California Restaurant Association. But I think, Guy Fieri's backing, he's pushing hard on the Restaurant Employee Relief Fund. I don't think there's not enough relief you can give to this industry because it's decimated by this. I mean, this is, 2008 was a financial event. This is a consumer event and candidly an employee negative event. I don't think anybody could ever imagined, literally laying off 100% of the restaurant staff in the whole country. I mean, think about that. I mean, it's unimaginable. And the Depression, quite frankly, came over time. So you sort of, you knew it was bad, that it was coming over years. This happened in a week, so it's just hard to even, I think we're all going to look back on this and just think, how the heck did we get through it? Because it is the black swan event you could ever imagine. But I think, any relief fund right now, I'm sure they're all good, as long as they're directly going to people. But the National Restaurant Association, I think, is particularly good at doing things like this.
Yeah. Great.
Thank you. Great. Well, thank you, Andrea, Bill, and Renee. And as promised, we're opening it up for some audience Q&A. So the first one here is for Renee. An audience member is asking, can you please go over what safety procedures you've had to implement to make the pickup and to-go business safe?
Sure. So our governor and our public health department post updates regularly. And as of yesterday, Governor Inslee posted spoke about kind of a criteria for exactly that for reopening, which hasn't been released yet. But, it was a little bit flying blind in the beginning. I think in Seattle, people, no one was wearing masks. No one was wearing gloves. No one was really, all they were trying to do was stay away from each other. And so trying to regulate that, we initially let people in the restaurant one at a time. We then felt like that was just too much work to then kind of re-sanitize everything and run around. So then we let them on the patio, and then we felt the same response where we're like, now they're touching the bottles on the patio rather than inside the restaurant. So we eventually just we closed the patio off essentially, and at Bateau we have a table right at the front door. Same with at Wilmot's, where essentially there's no access to the restaurant at all. And we try to get people to phone in their orders. We take all orders either over Caviar, OpenTable, and eventually Talk, and I don't know what other else, but a lot of them, so that all of the handling of credit cards and all of that is done. It's surprising how much work it is to take orders that, without having that. So we're hoping that not only is it making our work more efficient, it's making us safer and making the guests safer. We have sanitized pens and non-sanitized pens areas that we're constantly re-sanitizing. We have boards that we let people sign their credit cards on, because we don't have a POS that they don't have to sign a slip. And that gets re-sanitized every time. We're all wearing gloves. We're all wearing masks. We bleach everything constantly. I mean, it's just a lot of upkeep, essentially. But, we slowly got to a place where we don't let anyone in the dining room. We don't let anyone go to the bathroom. And we try to serve them all from outside the patio. And then there's like tape marks on the area for people to stay separate. And it's gotten a lot better. People now kind of get it. But at first it was just, it was scary. And it's hard to be, that kind of forceful around people's movement. So it took us some time to kind of come up with the gracious way to, get people to, separate and all of that. So it took some time, but using your local health organization, I think, is the smartest place to start, because it's really clear and bulleted into what the expectations are around sanitation.
Great, thank you. There are some questions around the cocktail kits, which people think are a great idea. Also interested in the food kits. Do you do raw foods, partially cooked foods for reheat? Just some clarification there. Bill, do you want to speak to that piece of it?
We've been doing a lot of raw food. It's interesting. We do obviously, of course, they're doing meals, which are also popular now. We've been doing more meals now than we started. We actually started with raw food because we were trying to do what Renee did. We were trying to get rid of everything that was inside of our refrigerators at the time. So we literally took everything that was in the refrigerators and just put it, in some instances on tables, and sort of created a little market, and found that was actually the most desirable for people at the beginning, because they were just, they didn't want to go to Whole Foods. The lines at the markets at very early on were pretty bad. Now, of course, people, I think, are getting to the point where they're tired of cooking for themselves. So now they want cooked food. So I think both are good. I mean, it's a little bit like you're in the Blue Apron business, which always sort of mortified me a bit. Because we're in the prepared food side of it. So I never imagined getting a steak that's not cooked, But it's interesting. People love, high quality products. All the boutique specialty items are very popular. I think that, again, it's just such an odd thing to be, essentially in the grocery business. I mean, it's not anything, that part of it is very strange. Now, mind you, one of the locations where we're doing this, we're thinking we might maintain market now forever. I mean, just keep it and just keep going with it. Because it was actually a coffee place before that was actually never very successful, to be honest with you. It's doing much better as a bodega than it was as a coffee place. But yeah, I think it's, it's interesting. You're willing to almost, do whatever to make the client happy, which of course we were in before. But, the idea that, we're selling wine to go, we had a retail license in one of the places and we always sold wine, but now, you're selling a lot more wine, so again, it's sort of this pivot into sort of the prepared foods, the market business, I think is sort of a keeper, for sure.
Does this change your business model once you reopen dining rooms and invite diners back in for seated meals? Like, what components of this pivot stay going forward, or do they?
Well, for us, I mean, we were building and still are actually in construction. We're in construction on a bunch of stuff in the midst of all this, which is social distancing on construction sites is still also required. So it's slowed everything down quite a bit, but there is building going on. We've been designing pickup areas and delivery systems and, consolidation apps, consolidated multiple delivery apps. We just never had put it into any full service restaurants. This was a concept that was built around this, which I always thought was the future of sort of quick service business. You had to be good at this anyway. Now, of course, in full service dining rooms, you're doing it. So you don't have a place for somebody to walk up and pick up food normally because you don't think about it like that. So I think you have to sort of reconfigure the consumer facing side of your business to do this, permanently. But again, I think that, it's just a different business model than we had before, but I think it makes sense now to keep it.
Thank you. Renee, I know this listener is interested in hearing a little bit more about the cocktail kits as well. So would you want to elaborate there on how it's done?
Yeah, so we are, a little bit like what we did with the walk-ins, where we're trying to move everything before it spoils. The liquor obviously was fine for a while, so we didn't think about it till probably 3 weeks in, I guess. We just looked at what we had and started to think about what we could make with it. And so we put together, originally we were putting together, because it was pretty warm here in Seattle, believe it or not. So we were making spritz kits, and when all the Amari that could go into spritz and the Cremant was gone, we then moved on to Manhattan kits and Sazerac kits. And, we opened up our bulk jars of the Amarena cherries and put them in little compostable cups, and we'd give them an orange, and, away they would go. They would have to probably re-up on the orange at some point, because the bottle was generally liters as well. But yeah, we would write out handwritten cards with the recipe on it so that people could know what to do when they got home. And then it goes in a bag with with all the condiments that are supposed to be appropriate to it. So we're getting today little tiny scrappy bitters jars, so that you don't have to give, like we were giving away like a 375 milliliter jar of bitters that no one will ever want to have it'll be in their cabinet forever. So Scrappy sells little ones, which is great. So we're getting those so that we can send people away with not an absurd amount of bitters. But yeah, it's actually really fun, and I think people got into it, and I think it's kind of like people cooking at home. I think we all kind of know that there's plenty of beverage consumption going on too. So having new things that they don't have to go to the grocery store for, like Bill said, and be able to support places that they love is great. So
that's awesome. I think there's some curiosity around how the both of you have flexed your marketing strategies and channels during this time to connect with guests, to connect with the community, to let them know what you're doing. Any tips or tricks there? Maybe start with Bill and then we can go to Renee.
I mean, it's super hard. I mean, that's one of the things I mentioned is that, sort of the future, I think of these types of situations is you have to have much better communication systems. I don't think anybody imagined sitting and watching a presidential press conference or the New York governor every single day as being sort of the highlight of the day and to listen to what happened in New York. But, everybody's watching Andrew Cuomo and it's like a regular thing. It's 45 minutes in the morning just to find out, what we have in store for us in California, possibly. But I think, listen, Tartine has Instagram accounts that are, they have huge Instagram followings, Chad and Liz and the restaurants. And so Instagram becomes a really great communication system because there's a lot of people on it for us. But I think that's been one of the real challenges. I think we always lamented sort of the decline of the media journalism and the loss of print media, which I think this is only going to accelerate it, if anything. So it's really odd. You don't really have, the normal channel that you would use. It's like Eater it's out there. I don't know how many people are reading Eater in this situation. But I think social media, for what it's worth, has been the only tool because no one's moving around. So it's very hard to, it's not like you're going to drive by and see that you're open. Everybody's I think the sign making business is doing well because we're all making signs saying we're a market now, we're a bodega, we have fresh meat. Who would ever imagine?
I would echo that. It's definitely an Instagram game right now. And I think it's true. There's no, we're not having meetings about any sort of grand marketing schemes. It's literally like day by day, hour by hour, like what's available and what we're pushing. We have our marketing director, Annie Park, is one of the people working at Wilmot's, and she's scrambling around collecting photos and asking everyone to send things, and then does posts for us, which is great. And but it's hard to be current too, because you're not only cooking for 10 hours a day, you're then trying to plan for what the new steak cut is that we're going to try to sell out of. And it's just, it's constant. You're just constantly churning to figure out what the next thing is that you're going to need to be selling. We started a Dungeness crab thing this week, and that was surprisingly very successful. So tomorrow I'll be cleaning crab for hours. So, it's fun too. It's fun to see what people are excited about. So, but Instagram is for sure the place that all of that information's been distributed for us.
Well, if only I was in Seattle, I could do with some of that crab and the spread.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, right? Good stuff.
Well, this brings us to time. I just wanted to thank you all, Bill, Renee, Andrea, all of our listeners today for joining us. Really great conversation and great to connect with all of you. I do invite many of you to join us next week as well. We'll have Dan Simons of Founding Farmers, who's done something interesting with the grocery store pivot, as well as his accountant, Brad Mendelson, that will explore all things financial and how they redefine their P&Ls for the group. So hope you can join us again. But until then, please stay safe, take good care, and be kind to yourself and others. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye.
Great.